Hey guys, I'm back in Munich after a very fueling workshop with clients and the wine fair in Austria, where I recorded the, let's say, wrap up for episode 237. And this is the weekly update on February 22nd. And while you're listening to this, I'm back in Austria for lectures on alcohol-free industry drinks and the whole category, and artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence is not part of this episode, but actually there's a lot going on considering what to do with alcohol in the future. How will the WHO statement will impact the industry in the next years? What is the EU considering to do with wine labels, and what brands are actually focusing on when it comes to the future wine and generally the drinks industry. So have fun with the weekly update 238. Welcome to the Pinot and Pixel podcast episode number 238, the weekly update on February 22nd. And we have 18 topics to cover. And yeah, guess what? The selection was not easy because there were many more on the list. And I finally decided to just get rid of some to focus on these 18, interesting, exciting, and also sometimes weird stories. Some about marketing, some about branding, the future of the industry, and what is currently going on in the market. And we start with the harvest report of Bordeaux for 2024. And Bordeaux saw the lowest harvest of the last 30 years. And this usually sounds like, there was something going on with the weather. I don't know, there were impacts with hail, with frosts, with mildew, and this happened in 2013, for example, in 2017. But this year was different because the vineyard area of Bordeaux is steadily declining through the impact that some decisions and the support by the government has done. So right now, the surface of Bordeaux, the vineyard area, has come down to 94,000 hectares, resulting in 3.3 million hectoliters. So this harvest of 2024 is 14% lower than in 2023, where they had 3.8 million hectoliters. So right now we're seeing the impact of the pull-out scheme of vineyards, but in addition, maybe a bigger focus on quality and, of course, some weather conditions as well. Right now, people are considering what might happen with the prices, because usually when there is a lower amount of grapes harvested, resulting in a smaller amount of wine, the prices go up because usually there is not enough wine to feed the demand. But we all know the cellars are still full. Nevertheless, there are many markets that are interested in the current vintage. And we're not talking about subscription because these wines will be released in 2027. But of course, we will talk about en primeur in April, latest in May, talking about the 2024 vintages of the Grand Crus. But there are two main factors. One, the tariffs of the United States, because there's a huge market for Bordeaux wines. It's over 340 million euros in 2024 that were exported to the US market, which is a lot. And considering the fact that there might be tariffs on that, 25% were said once upon a time. So this can have a huge impact. And in addition, the market usually compares the sales of the last year to the availability of the current vintage. So 3.5 million liters were sold in 2024 and 3.3 million hectoliters, I said liters, right? Hectoliters were produced. So this looks like there is a bigger demand than we actually can provide. So this might drive the prices up as well. And this is one of the most dangerous things for Bordeaux, actually. And it would also be quite stupid after they have finally figured out that Bordeaux prices were way too high over the last years. So last year in 2024, we saw a decline of en primeur sales for the 2023 vintages of an average 15 to 20%, which was good, logical, and maybe not bad for the market. Still, it was not the success they expected. But again, if they are considering raising the prices again, well, there will be no help for the en primeur system at all. So this is the current situation. They are afraid of taxes. They are afraid of not having enough wine for feeding the demand, and the prices will go up. And it's a very complex system. We will see what will happen with the prices at the latest in May, when we'll talk about the en primeur prices of the 2024 vintage in Bordeaux. From one, distracted market in Bordeaux going to a currently quite crazy and exciting and excited market in the UK. And we were talking about many wineries that went up for sale, and there are 2 more right now on the market, which not only shows maybe wineries struggling with feeding the demand or just losing interest in the wine industry, because, I mean, several years ago, the UK was kind of a hidden gem, but right now people have discovered that English wines are actually really good, and the price value is usually better compared to France, and the sparkling wines from the UK are amazing. So maybe some of them really struggle in, I don't know, either selling their wines, or maybe they have more issues with the cash flow due to the taxes that are upcoming, or they're struggling to sell the wines locally because the price level of the UK is not what you would want for these higher priced wines. So you have to look for export markets, which is not super easy, especially to the European Union after Brexit. So there are several reasons why you might put up your winery for sale. And this week, February 13, there was an article in the drinks business talking about 2 wineries, one in Kent, Blackton Farm in Tunbridge Wells, 4.59 million pounds. It's an estate producing an average 30,000 bottles a year, 12 acres. So what is it? 5 hectares, roughly. 5 hectares. Beautiful estate, just looking at the vineyards. It's mostly the champagne varieties, so Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier, and Chardonnay. And 4.6 million sounds expensive to me, but it's, again, I mean, I'm not super deep into this market, so it's tough to weigh in what this actually means. But there's another estate listed, Saddlescombe Vineyard in East Sussex, and not only the site is quite beautiful, but it is also way cheaper, and it's 16 acres, 5.24 acres under vine. It's mostly PVs, which are said to be more suitable for the English climate, region Solaris, Monarch, and there is the variety of varieties, Pinot Noir. Well, this is, 2 hectares roughly, and it is listed for 1.95 million pounds. So cheaper. Similar size when it comes to the estate, smaller size when it comes to the vineyard area, and maybe the varieties would be tougher to sell. I mean, there are people interested in pewees, in fungal-resistant varieties, but it's different when it comes to the international markets, because especially when we talk about English sparkling wine, people are more attracted to Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, and Meunier, of course, because it's the varieties they're used to, especially when they're interested in Franciacorta, in Champagne, or just high-quality traditional method sparkling wines. So this is I don't know how many wineries are already up for sale. Some come, some go. But it actually shows a very driven and also dynamic market. So if you or your brand are thinking about getting some shares in an English winery, or maybe even having vineyards over there, this might be something of interest for you. And just considering the fact that there are over 1,000 vineyards, over 220 wineries, there's a lot to offer, and maybe we will see more vineyards up for sale in the future. The English wine market is interesting as hell. Just my personal opinion. Sparkling wines are amazing. There are super good still wines coming up. There is a growing interest internationally, especially when we look at Scandinavia, the US, and even France. And they are discovering more and more different styles. And there's one guy, Tim Wildman, he's a master of wine. And I met him at London Wine Fair, I guess last year. And yeah, he was talking about some project. He's quite all in. And there is something called Brit Nat right now. It's the, English expression of a pet nat, Pétillant Naturel. So it's actually the fastest and easiest way to make a sparkling wine. Yeah, not considering carbonization, so just making a still wine and just soda streaming it with CO2. But I mean, if you are a fan of these very usually fruit-driven, fresh, sparkling wines, and sometimes they have this yeasty character you can compare to a beer, well, it's an interesting product. And the Brits are excited about this category, and more companies are producing sparkling wine in the style of a pet nat. And there are so many good reasons for making a pet nat. Usually it's cheaper, so it sits on the shelf for maybe 12 to 20 pounds compared to, 25 to 40 and up for traditional method sparkling wines, especially as a winery who wants to provide sparkling wine more quickly. So let's say, I don't know, in March of the following year of the harvest, this is your way to go. And sometimes if you have the skills, or a skilled winemaker who you can call a friend or a colleague, you can make this on your own estate. You don't need another winery to make your traditional method sparkling wine. You will need all the equipment and stuff. So this is really interesting. And if you want to get really funky, you don't even have to disgorge it. So you just keep the yeast in the bottle. It's a bit hazier and it attracts the people who are more familiar with crafted wines, low intervention wines, or as some people might call it, natural wines. So this is the style to look on. And the Brits are excited for it. We will see more of this in the future. And this actually, by Tim Wildman, sits on the shelves for roughly 15 pounds, 14.80. 9,000 bottles were already sold just in 2 months, which also shows a growing interest in the category. And I mean, okay, Tim Wildman, he has a following, he's a name in the industry, but this just excites me because I am a fan of the pet nat category. And just, I mean, look at this picture. It's just a beautiful color. It attracts people just by seeing the drink. So if you have never tried some, try it. If you're living in the UK, keep your eyes open for a pet nat, and maybe just ask traditional wineries, because I also know it from some other people. For example, Langham. Langham is said to be one of the best wineries in the UK, with a very talented winemaker, Tommy Grimshaw, and they produced a pet nat recently. And there is one more reason why this is an exciting category, because you can put it in a keg and sell it by keg, like freshly drawn. This is also very exciting for gastronomy, for bars, for pubs. So one more reason to have a look on the category of pet nat. And talking about another interesting part of the English wine industry, still wines, and it's still just 25 to 30% depending on what vintage you're looking at. There is a growing interest in still wines from the UK, but usually they use varieties you cannot sell more expensive as a sparkling wine. So, I don't know, Bacchus, Céval Blanc, sometimes Pinot Gris. But there is this winery, Kinsbrook Vineyard from Sussex, that wants to change the image of Chardonnay. Because Chardonnay, I mean, we all know this ABC campaign, Anything But Chardonnay, ABC, where people were actually surprised in a bad way by the 80s and 90s trend of making over-oaked, super full-bodied, in-your-face Chardonnays, usually reminding you of vanilla pudding, influenced by these, let's say, easy accessible, quote-unquote, Chardonnays from the United States or from South Africa, for example. And this is why this image came up. Anything but Chardonnay. But there are still people who actually don't know what this is all about, because they only relate Chardonnay to this kind of style. But actually, Chardonnay usually is a fairly neutral variety, which is high in acidity, which is great as a pure variety just made in stainless steel. More expressive, actually fresh, driven by acidity, and which can also age very well. I mean, Burgundy has shown this for ages, that it works quite well with oak as well. And yeah, over oaked, this is the worst thing you could do for some people. So this wine, which is called Anything But Chardonnay, wants to change the image. And Kinsbrook Vineyard said, well, there is this campaign and we want to show that there is this new, it's not new actually, but this original fresh style of Chardonnay. They have two different versions. One is made in 100% stainless steel, so the fresh expression comparable to a Chablis, for example. Oh, by the way, there are people saying, ABC, anything but Chardonnay, but I'm a fan of Chablis, because they actually don't know that Chablis is made of Chardonnay, because it's in stainless steel, it's fresh, it's high in acidity, and it perfectly fits seafood and just fish dishes and stuff like that. So this is an attempt of Kinsbrook Vineyard to show that there is a different style of Chardonnay. So the fresher one is made 100% stainless steel, and there's another one made with used oak. So it gets a bit fuller bodied, usually it goes through Malo, and then you have a slightly bolder but still more impressive and expressive Chardonnay, and not comparable to the vanilla pudding from the United States at all. And I mean, we're talking about stereotypes. There are great Chardonnays from the United States. I'm just talking about the general image of the lower priced Chardonnays sitting on the shelves with brands you actually don't want to have in your glass if you're looking for a good price value and a higher quality level. So Anything But Chardonnay, I really like it. The only thing that I would say scared me a little bit while reading this article was there is popcorn on the label. And I mean, when you have a very slight smell, a fine smell of popcorn, and actually a taste as well on the palate, in your wine, then this could be interesting. But if it is too much and the wine might be faulty, this is actually not good. And I mean, again, I'm not talking about the average low-involved customer, because if you just smell popcorn, you might even like it, because I mean, who's not attracted by popcorn? It's an interesting smell, and sometimes it reminds you of, I don't know, going to the cinema, having a great time. But if it's too intense, the wine might not be in the best condition. Either it's just reduction and it needs some air, it just has to breathe, and maybe sometimes there were some things that didn't go in the right direction during the fermentation. And I had this several times in cellars of friends, of colleagues and clients, and everybody deals with that in a different way. But if it's just a tiny amount, and the tasting notes include popcorn, by the way, it could be really exciting. So have an eye on your shelves in the special retail in the next weeks. Kinsbrook Vineyard just launched this wine. And if you've tried it, let me know in the comments or podcast@pinotpixel.com. We stay in the UK for one more news. The Plates London, a vegan restaurant, has become the first vegan restaurant in the UK to receive a Michelin star. And this is exciting and interesting in so many ways. When usually the UK meat culture, usually the UK food culture is very meat driven. So as a vegetarian or as a vegan, if you go to a I'm talking about the traditional pub restaurant, it's not easy to find a vegetarian dish. And it gets more difficult if you're vegan or whatever, just vegan and eggs and stuff like that. But there is a growing demand and a growing interest in the whole vegan vegetarian category. And just to give you some numbers, the UK is said to have a 5% share of vegans in the population, which is actually quite big. And there's a growing interest, especially with Gen Z, in vegan food and vegan restaurants. And there's not only dry January, there's also veganuary. And we are talking about hundreds of thousands of people taking part in the veganuary movement. So just, skipping dairy products and meat for at least 1 month. And even afterwards, studies show that they eat less meat, which is basically not a bad idea. And I don't want to talk about this, but this is just exciting in the way that a culture that is said to be very meat driven has a growing interest in vegetarian or vegan dishes and food. And secondly, usually when we talk about vegan or vegetarian marketing campaigns, articles, news, whatever, when you have a look at the comment section, the comments are very similar to the ones you can see with non-alcoholic beer or wine, so the whole alcohol-free category. And it feels like people are afraid because somebody or something shows them that it might be a good idea to change the habits they're currently having or they're just used to. And just looking back 50 years, we used to drink way more because we didn't know enough or much about the consumption of alcohol and what is happening with our body. And it's similar with the production of meat and what dairy products might have as effect on our bodies, and actually what the whole production of meat and dairy products means for the industry. And with the growing problem we're having with climate change, the meat production is one of the biggest factors on the planet. And people don't like this, but we have to face that there are things we have to change if we just want to, solve our planet. It's just like that. Nothing to add. So I like news like that, having a bigger focus on alternative diets, and the first vegan restaurant with the Michelin-starred. And we stay with gastronomy, but right now we go to Germany. And there was a recent study of the IFH in Cologne, made, I think, even every single year. At least it was the 6th time they conducted the study, where they asked thousands of people. Thousands of people. This time, 69,000 interviews were made with people in the biggest cities of Germany, and asking them questions what they are expecting of the inner cities of, downtown of the big cities, and what is missing, what brings them there. And there were some very, very interesting facts. And the main driver and the main outcome of this study was that gastronomy is getting more and more important for inner cities in Germany, which is actually a good thing because it brings people together. And after all we have experienced in the last couple of years with everything that happened around COVID, people want to have social gatherings again. They want to go out, they want to eat well, eat better, and they want to spend more money, which is interesting because we tend to spend less, but the upcoming generation Z and afterwards Alpha, they are more focused on higher quality and healthier products maybe, and they want to go out again. They want to meet friends and have a great night out with good food and good drinks. And this is basically the main driver of this study. And just giving you some numbers, the study showed that the inner cities are seen to be the melting pot of cultures and of all age groups, mainly driven by Generation Z. The focus is on social gatherings and the experience together. I already said that. And when it comes to the importance of gastronomy, we are looking at a scale of 1 to 6. 1 is super good and 6 is not interested at all. It's based on school grades in Germany, and gastronomy scored 2.2 when it comes to the importance. There is a need for improvement, the study showed, for leisure opportunities. So 40% of the cities scored lower than 3. And the cultural offerings should also be improved. So we need more things that attract people and give experience. And in addition, they ask all the participants why they actually came to the inner city, to downtown. And Gen Z said 56%, we were coming to go shopping, and 44% said we came for the restaurants. So there is a growing interest and success for gastronomy. And I mean, this doesn't mean that we need more restaurants. It might just mean that we should diversify our offerings, our menu, our events section. So just thinking about if you're a restaurant owner, your menu, you might consider changing something, having a weekly menu or something, adding healthier things to the menu, adding different drinks, cocktails, non-alcoholic drinks. So just diversifying the offer and then attracting more people. It doesn't have to be the 275th restaurant in the same street. It just has to be different and attract more people. And this sounds easy. It is not. I know this. And just looking at the biggest cities around Munich, we see more and more restaurants closing because I mean, the costs are rising, and still we have a staff shortage in gastronomy. And this is something you have to deal with, of course. But if the number of bars, of restaurants is going down and the demand is still there, we just might increase space and offerings. And talking about diversification and the change in the industry, we all know that there is a decline in wine consumption and alcohol consumption. And statements like the one the WHO had in 2023 that no alcohol amount is safe for you. Then we have the situation with the taxes we had in China, we are expecting to have in the US. The whole industry is changing. So what are the future markets for your wine brand, for spirits brands, or what are the the exciting, the interesting, and the growing countries? And actually, it's not only the big countries. I mean, there's a big growth still in the US, in India, and in Brazil, but we are also talking about, I would call them emerging, or in the article they call them developing countries. So the smaller ones, especially in Asia, we're talking about Vietnam, we're talking about the Philippines. Southeast Asia is really big, and when it comes to beer and spirits. Africa, South Africa, they saw and expect a growth in beer, cider, and RTD. And in Latin America, Mexico and Brazil were the most exciting markets, especially when we are looking at Generation Z, where still some categories, such as wine, are failing to attract young customers, maybe because of the image, maybe because of the price. Well, it's a very complex system, but maybe just because young people still tend to have just an easy drinking beer. They don't want to talk about a drink for half an hour. And I mean, the cocktail or the long drink is just easier if you want to get hammered. It's still part of the culture. So it's easier if you are a beer or a spirits brand. In some markets, generally saying that the markets that are expected to have the biggest growth are not the markets you might think of. This is actually the biggest outcome of this article. And some brands, of course, are discovering that they might have to change something in their portfolio, in their strategy, focusing on other markets, focusing on expanding their portfolio with brands that might not have been in any category before. And we talked about several in the last weeks. And one more, Constellation Brands in that case, has invested in an alcohol-free functional beverage brand. I think it's called Hio, Hiyo. And for Constellation Brands, this is one future category, and they really think that is a category that might grow in the future, not only for them, but just generally. So talking about a SWOT analysis, this might be on the list for opportunities in the future for almost every brand. So they are excited about the category. They're excited about the brand. It's a minor share. It's a minor stake in the brand. But I mean, usually this also shows that they want to test something. But they are not the first, and they won't be the last. And if there are, especially startups in the alcohol-free industry, some of them are usually looking for investors, also the bigger ones. And if you have already built your brand in a premium category, in a premium segment, or in a premium market, there might be some bigger brands knocking on your door and saying, well, have you ever thought of being part of a bigger portfolio of our brand? Here's your offer. And we stay with alcohol-free drinks, but we talk about one of the most exciting markets of the future, Korea. And the article from the Korea Times was, well, let's say the second time I was thinking about talking about this in the podcast. The first time was an interview, or let's say a chat. It was actually not an interview I had with a consultant working in the Korean market at Wine Paris. He was working for a brand called Bonbon, which basically buys dealcoholized wine from a German producer, imports it to Korea, and sells it like hell. The Korean market is so crazy when it comes to alcohol-free right now. The growth rates are huge. There are very few numbers available. So it's considered to be 1% of the whole industry when we talk about drinks with alcohol. And then 1% is just drinks without alcohol. Beer is the biggest category. Beer is growing. And the three biggest beer companies are also heavily investing in alcohol-free. And I mean, they are seeing, and this is a global trend, that especially the younger drinkers are interested in alcohol-free. So we're talking about Gen Z again. And almost every brand that gets it in Korea is currently making alcohol-free beer. So alcohol-free beer is growing. Alcohol-free wine is getting a thing. And the guy I talked to at Wine Paris, he said, it's just crazy. I had this idea one night. Let's have some alcohol-free wine. It was technically not possible in Korea, so we talked to one of the most mature markets in the world, Germany. We contacted some producers, and in the end, one said, yes, we can deliver white, red, rosé, sparkling, how you want it, and then they sold it like crazy. And we will see more of this in the future. So maybe if you are a brand that is looking for expansion, exporting products, Korea might be a market to consider, actually. One of the biggest things that is driving the interest in the alcohol-free section is not only that are people just intrinsically driven by moderating the drinking behavior or by just being healthier and eating healthier and drinking healthier, is also the external factors. And I guess one of the biggest one was the statement of the WHO in 2023, no amount of alcohol is safe for you, which of course caused some controversy in the whole industry, and which also brought out huge lobby groups trying to argue for alcohol, because I mean, generally alcohol is bad for you, but there might be some factors that can have a positive impact. 100,000 of studies. I don't want to talk about this at the right now, but the WHO added something in the last couple of weeks. They ask for cancer risk warnings on wine labels. And if you think that the people were already arguing in the industry, this is another level. So, I mean, this is crazy in so many ways, because we have to consider what this will mean for a whole industry, because we are talking about wine bottles, okay? First and foremost, I mean, of course, alcohol, but the wine industry feels to be the most powerful at the moment. And the first move towards this was made by the WHO in the end of 2024. And this article puts it out. I mean, the reason was the US Surgeon General, who stated that 7 types of cancer are directly connected to consumption of alcohol, of wine as well. And currently, some people try to defend that and try to find studies that show the opposite, so that actually wine is good for your health and there is no direct correlation with cancer and stuff. There was a documentary on the German television ARD with, what's his name, Hirschhausen, and he also stated that the consumption of alcohol, of beer, of wine, and all the others is directly correlated to cancer, and especially for women, it's very, very dangerous when we talk about breast cancer. And that being said, the WHO said we need mandatory standardized labels on alcoholic beverages. What they consider and what they actually recommend is to put cancer warnings on the label, drinking warnings, of course, for pregnant women, stuff like that. And the first companies that are actually considering of changing the law are France, Germany, Lithuania, and the first one who already did it is Ireland. And this article was also present in the drinks business this week. With 2026, Ireland has a mandatory rule of having cancer warnings on wine bottles, and some brands have already started. What we are, if you're watching, there is this picture of Villa Maria from New Zealand, and they already have the warning on the label saying drinking alcohol causes liver disease. There is a direct link between alcohol and fatal cancers. And then you have the don't drink while being pregnant sign on the bottle. And this is what, people are currently arguing about. Do we really need this? What does this mean for the industry? What does this mean for brands? Because, some brands, they don't want to put this on their labels because they think that this will confuse consumers and consumers will turn away from alcohol or at least from wine, go to maybe beer or another category or maybe just another brand that doesn't have this warning on the label. We don't know. And the consultant that was interviewed for this article said that this is a huge menace for brands if they want to stay in the market. I mean, Ireland is just the beginning. Maybe some more companies will adapt this strategy. And if the WHO gets stronger and it influences also the domestic health institutes, this might come, guys. And there was the huge discussion in 2023. Many people were arguing when the European Union asked for the nutritional labels and the ingredients lists on wine. And many people weren't satisfied at all with that. But in that case, you were able to argue, well, wine is the only category that doesn't have it on the label. And it might be good because people want to know what they are actually drinking. So this can only be good for higher quality products. But right now, of course, people are afraid that having these warnings on the label, not only brands, but the whole industry can struggle even more. I mean, this can push non-alcoholic sales, but there is still a huge market for alcohol, for beer, for wine, for spirits. And of course, they don't like this idea at all. At the same time, there was an article in Wine News in Italy where one of the biggest names in the industry of Italy was interviewed, Angelo Gaia, and he said, comparing wines to spirit is an abuse that has lasted too long. And what he wanted to say, and what he said actually, is, I don't want to quote him, I'm just trying to rephrase it, but what he actually said is that there is a very, very long history and culture behind wine. Fermentation has been here for 10,000 years. Wine has been here for ages. We improved the production and everything. And it's not only just like an alcoholic product, it's part of culture. And this is a quote: "No other beverage produced in Western has the cultural importance of wine, which plunges its roots in humanity, history, culture, landscape, tradition, and religion." And I mean, this is right. And maybe wine is one of the most sophisticated products and the farthest in when it comes to development and complexity and diversity. The problem is it's still alcohol. And if just talking about science, if we really know that alcohol is a problem, and it doesn't matter if it's in beer, in wine, in spirits, liquor, whatever, the argument that it has been part of the culture is actually not good. It's actually really stupid, because just because we have done it for several thousand years, knowing today that it might be a bad idea to consume it, well, then we shouldn't do it. You know, it's not black or white, okay? There's always a path in between. And talking about moderate consumption, if moderation is defined maybe a bit differently than it is today. And I'm a big fan of the way that Canada did it. And Canada said and is saying 1 drink per week for women and 2 drinks per week for men is something we can recommend without having a bad impact on your body. And then you can everybody can choose. Everyone can choose how much he or she wants to drink. This is totally fine. But we need more information for the people, you know? And I like this quote that was part of another article, that we should be focused on informing people, not alarming them. So people need to know what alcohol is doing to their bodies. And maybe this hasn't been a part of education in schools and in universities. I don't know, and just in society, because we are so used to drink alcohol every single day. And the decrease of the 1970s until today is also a result for more education, for more information on alcohol, of course. But we shouldn't defend alcohol itself just by claiming that it has been part of culture. Of course it was. But discovering that it kills people and it's bad for your health and it's bad for your body, saying it has been part of the culture, this is not good, actually. This is not good. There are so many reasons for moderate consumption we should focus on, combined with moderation, with education, with information, that are way better, in my opinion, than putting up interviews like this. The last thing about the consumption of alcohol was an article from Austria where a study showed that 200,000 people every single year are skiing while being drunk. And this is stupid in so many ways. We are talking about 25% of the people who were interviewed that said, yes, I was skiing while being drunk. There are 30,000 people injured every single year on slopes, on skis. And one of the main reasons is that people are just drunk. And it's not only the people who get injured, it's also the people that hit them and cause these injuries. And I mean, there are many ways to enjoy alcohol, but you should never enjoy alcohol and drive and ski and just, even by riding a bike is dangerous for you and for others. And this study is alarming, actually. It's really alarming. And I used to ski a lot, and just considering the facts, I mean, it's not representative, but imagine being on a slope, skiing, and every fourth person that is just around you is drunk and is actually a threat to your health while skiing yourself. I don't want to put this episode on the dark side of the alcohol consumption, but there are things we should consider. And moderate consumption also means taking care of yourself and taking care of others. And this is something that should always be part of every story we tell about the products we love. We're going back to the industry and following the trend that we are currently seeing globally. There was an article in the Wine Searcher saying that the US spirits consumers are trading down, which means the value went up. Spirit sales by volume were up 1% overall in 2024, but the sales by value, so the dollars spent, dropped overall last year for the first time in more than 25 years. And the only category that was still growing was tequila by 2%. So tequila is still on the rise, which might change with the introduction of tariffs on Mexican products. But, well, we can't tell this at the moment. Generally, this is also something where we should say that there is at least a pause for the premiumization effect. And we're talking about the whole spirits industry in the US, of course. Some categories might still be good, some might be bad. We were talking about cognac, Armagnac, have seen a decline over the last months and years. Tequila is still on the rise, and this might be the reason why Megan Thee Stallion, 30-year-old rapper from the United States, has launched her own tequila. She's so excited about this product that she actually said, well, I just love tequila. I crafted it myself. It was so many iterations, and right now I have the perfect product, and the bottle is just crazy. The link is in the show notes, and if you're watching, look at the bottle and try not to look at her because, I mean, she wants to look like that, and it's just crazy. It's attractive. It's attracting people, I guess. But same with the bottle is just beautiful. For me personally, it's just a bit over the top, but this is a perfectly designed product, and I guess it is similar with the product in the bottle. And just considering that the largest share of tequila drinkers in the United States, 25% of the age group of 25 to 34, is drinking tequila, which is the biggest age group for tequila in the United States. And this is actually the main peer group of Megan Thee Stallion. So this is smart. Yeah. So if you're considering bringing out a product for your community, just look at what the community in your country is drinking if you're focused on spirits, and bring out the product. And she loves tequila, she's saying, and her biggest peer group is sitting between 25 and 30, I would say. maybe even also some younger ones considering this is a smart move. There is just one thing we have to consider again, that the tariffs might come, and this can have a negative impact, at least for the supply of the product. And this is a Mexican made product. Most of the agaves are coming from Mexico. So it can have an impact on the sales and on the prices of the product, of course. The last 3 articles are dedicated to some interesting things when it comes to marketing, non-alcoholic products, and celebrities. I don't want to call it a celebrity corner, even though the first celebrity was already there. Before we talk about what has happened to Tom Holland, I experienced this myself in the US in 2024. The article is called "The Rules on Serving Under 18s Non-Alcoholic Beer," or let me just rephrase it, non-alcoholic drinks. You might feel a bit awkward and confused when you are in a shop buying a non-alcoholic beer, for example, or wine, and the staff asks you for your ID. Because you think, like I did, well, it's a non-alcoholic beer. There's no alcohol in it. Why do you ask? And right now I see it in a different way, because if you are selling a de-alcoholized product, or let's say a look-alike, so a non-alcoholic beer in a can, a non-alcoholic wine in a wine bottle, or an alcohol-free distillate, like spirits, a look-alike tequila, vodka, gin, whatever. This can imply, or at least lead to getting used to drinking stuff from bottles like this. And the moment you turn 18, you might feel more attracted to beer, to wine, and to spirits. And there are actually studies showing that the consumption of lookalike drinks under the age of 18 can lead to being more attracted to drinks like that when you when you turn 18. So this is something they want to prevent, or at least saying, when we ask for your ID, when you are 16, 17, and not already 18, we just want to say, this is a lookalike product, so please beware of the consumption. I guess most people won't care, but maybe some people might rethink their consumption, or at least considering the fact that this is actually quite close to original. Especially when we talk about beer, taste-wise, many products are very, very close to the original one. But if you have barely drunk alcohol, or you have never had any alcohol in your life before, between 16 and 25 or so, maybe you just don't want to discover the world of alcohol, because you are really happy with your alcohol-free beer or your alcohol-free wine or RTD or whatever. But just so you know, there are some rules that are recommended, and one is asking people for their ID under the age of 18 if they are older than 15, just to show, this is a lookalike drink, and just be aware. And this happened to Tom Holland, but the funny story is not that he was asked for an ID when he bought an alcohol-free beer. It was his own beer brand. So he said, I was at Target supermarket and I wanted to buy my own beer, Bordeaux. And I was standing at the cashier, and the person in front of me asked for my ID. And yeah, well, it is funny, isn't it? So you have your own beer, you're a celebrity, and you want to buy your own beer, and then the person says, I can't sell it to you because I don't know who you are, I don't know how old you are, and this is an alcohol-free beer, and we have to ask for the ID. And I read so many posts on that on Instagram, and the funniest part usually is the comment section, and there were people like, this happened to me as well, and I ended the conversation while showing them my Wikipedia page because this staff member didn't recognize him. I mean, Tom Holland is a public figure, but not everybody knows him. So she wasn't, recognizing him. And then he was like, well, I'm Tom Holland and this is my beer. And finally he found, what is it? I don't know what he found. Maybe it wasn't his ID, but it was something different to show that he is actually 18. But this is just funny, and I'm really looking forward to the comment section on Instagram on the post I'm making for this. So if you have fun with this, just leave a comment. And last but not least, a post that caught my attention this week on Instagram was called "Scream If You Want to Have a Beer." And what's behind is a beer brand that made a marketing campaign where they put up a machine with a microphone, a big microphone, and if you were able to scream loud enough, they served you a can of beer. So you just see people standing in front of the machine and just screaming like hell because they want to have a beer. And when I did some research on this campaign is actually already 9 years old. So the original article is from February 2016, where a festival in Canada, the company Farnham Ale and Lager installed this scream-powered vending machine, as they call it. And yeah, people just loved it. And it's one of these marketing campaigns where you imagine the people sitting on a desk having an alcohol-free beer or a normal beer or whatever they are consuming, saying, what do you think of putting up a vending machine where you have the scream and then you get your beer can? Because it catches the attention of people. Can you imagine a guy standing in front of a machine and just screaming? And then you see, oh, he gets a beer. And then you go over there. And then you start talking about the brand. It catches your attention on social media. And you're Googling the brand. And this is just crazy organic marketing. And this is why I love it. Just this post has 100,000 likes. And it's a German account. Yeah, I mean, we know that Germans love beer, but this is a very, very exciting campaign. Yeah. The link is in the show notes if you want to watch it. Have a wonderful weekend. This is it for the weekly update, February 22nd. Have a great weekend. I see you on Wednesday with the next episode. Ciao, ciao.